I just think it's sad that people don't care enough about their horse to stop using a particular piece of tack. Nobody's even saying that you have to stop using spurs altogether. Just start using more ethical spurs and use them correctly when you actually have a need to use them. Hey bitch, and welcome back to me ruining everything you thought about something that you probably once used.
Stop! You violated the law!
You know, I was not planning on making this video. Scratch that. I fucking was planning on making this video. Spurs have been an equine welfare issue in pretty much every equestrian sport all across the world. And this has been a topic that's been heavily debated. It's all over the internet. There are plenty of new incoming riders, up-and-coming riders, professional riders that question the usage and the humane welfare behind spurs and if they should be used at all. There's tons of articles on this, and it seems to be a big point of confusion for most people in society. However, you might be a little surprised as to what I'm gonna say in this video, because something that I have recently started doing is diving very deeply into the subject of spurs and the equine welfare issue surrounding spurs. It's not entirely black and white. However, a lot of it is black and white, and the equestrian world chooses to turn a blind eye. So be sure to share this video and help stop misinformation being spread to the general public and to other equestrians, because I see a lot of people, whenever I talk about spurs, they, get on their little keyboards and they become keyboard warriors and they want to go attack me without having any valid arguments to back their claims, or they make videos like this on TikTok.
Western riders are known for having some pretty aggressive abuse.
I can't understand why people continue to talk about things that they know nothing, absolutely nothing about.
Which I just think is so funny that it got so many likes, because it's like, you literally didn't disprove any of what I said at all. Dude, it's actually so hilarious watching videos that people post on TikTok trying to dismantle my arguments on spurs when they literally don't do that at all. Okay, cool, just because you rubbed spurs on you for a few seconds, that somehow disproves my entire argument? That's not an argument. I mean, you could literally put a bit in somebody's mouth and yank them around for a few seconds and they'd be totally fine. That has nothing to do with dismantling the argument surrounding bits, which I've talked extensively about. And there's so much misinformation out there about spurs, and there's so few studies conducted that the studies that are conducted are pretty much swept under the rug because nobody wants to address this problem. And it's time that we address it, okay? Grab a snack. Before we get into this video, I just want to say that these are the new Savage hoodies, and there are also sweatshirts available now. You guys can go pick those up online at linkequestrian.com, and we also are giving away this halter for the month of October, so make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you want to be entered into that giveaway. So all those links are down below, bitch. They're down below.
I wouldn't get on a horse without having my spurs on. It's to control your horse. It's to control the life in his body, to control where that life is directed. Notice that these rowels are much larger than the average rowel that most people see. These bigger rowels are actually the most modest rowel that you can have on a spur. These spurs are more gentle than those smaller rowel spurs that you see a lot of people wearing. Think about pressure distribution, okay? If I have, say, the tip of a lead pencil, and I push down, that is more pressure in a concentrated area. That will be more severe. If I turn that pencil around and use the eraser, which is a broader tip, it distributes that pressure more. So it would be like this versus that. See, it distributes the pressure more, just like the tree in a saddle.
I love people. I just love how so many people have opinions on so many things without actually doing any research to back their opinions. I think this video is a perfect example of somebody who means well but is just completely wrong. This video has been spread all over the internet, and there's so many people who use this as an example of, yes, spurs are not abusive. See? This guy gets the entire mechanical use of the spur and pressure distribution completely wrong, and I'm going to go over that in a study, but the whole purpose of pressure distribution is to cause less pain, basically meaning that the more surface area is making contact with the horse, the less pain the spur is actually going to cause, and the more it's just going to feel like a little bit of pressure. That's the whole idea behind riding in non-abusive spurs, because there are plenty of spurs that actually increase the surface area of the spur to make it less painful and more of just a pressure rather than pain response in the horse. He tries to manipulate it by saying that because all of them are making contact at a certain time that it's not actually causing as much pressure as what it looks. I mean, no. No. If you place a big circular weight down on the snow is going to hold that weight up most of the way. It might sink a few inches, but it's going to hold it up most of the way because it's evenly distributing the pressure among one solid big surface. If you have a bunch of little circles with the same amount of weight, but they're all in different areas, it's going to sink down into the snow. It's not going to hold it up because it's being distributed against a bunch of different pressure points, not one full pressure point. So it doesn't matter how many spokes there are on a spur. What matters is the overall surface area of what's making contact with the horse, if that makes sense to people, because I know a lot of people don't want to believe this. And I think it's really funny when people just say, oh, because I've used this thing, that must mean that my experience is the only valid one and anybody else who speaks out otherwise is wrong. And something that I have tried very hard is to put my money where my mouth is and actually test them out for myself to understand the welfare issues surrounding it.
And even when I stop to do a leg yield, like she'll leg yield over poles, okay, so I'll use the spur at first, and then I don't even use it a lot of times. I use my calf to continue it, you know. So what I'll do is I'll lighten up the pressure. Once we're doing it, everything gets lighter. Like even using that rein, she obviously leg yields to the right pretty nicely.
I personally am not a fan of riding in spurs. However, I do not think that all spurs are abusive if used correctly. But there is a difference between inherently abusive spurs that no one should use and spurs that are okay to use if you're experienced enough as to not hurt the horse and cause an equine welfare issue. But before I tell you guys what spurs you should and shouldn't use and why, we're going to talk about the study, because I know that literally nobody in the equestrian world ever cites anything, and they all just base what they say off of opinions. In the spirit of trying to bring some science to this argument, I'm going to showcase this study. This study was conducted by the Equestrian Performance Research and Knowledge Exchange Arena. As far as I know, this study has no biases, and I will link the study below, but we're going to talk about the abstract just so that way this video is not a million fucking years long. Spurs are traditionally worn by riders to enable more precise stimuli or leg aids to be applied, promoting for changes in locomotion, activity, and direction of horses. Equestrian competitions have seen eliminations and horse welfare concerns rise due to the presence of blood on the horses related to spur use. This is in equestrian English and Western events. The aims of this study were to describe spur use across equestrian disciplines and identify reported risk factors that are associated with an increased frequency of skin abrasions. An online survey was administered via social media platforms, industry connections, and national online media sources. It included questions on rider demographics, spur design, injury rates, and perception of current competition regulations. 858 participants responded, resulting in 628 complete responses for further analysis. And for anyone wondering why they didn't reference other studies that would have been conducted on the amount of horses injured by spurs per year, it's because there aren't any studies on that, because nobody actually reports horse injuries by spurs. People will just blow it off or take care of it themselves because spur injuries are generally just skin abrasions that aren't too deep that you can just put wound ointment over. It doesn't make them any less abusive, it just makes it easier for owners to cover up if they go too far and abuse their horse. So spur abrasions and wounds are 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, never reported. 47% of all participants used spurs. Relationships were found between spur use and gender and duration of years riding. Males were 2.88 times more likely to use spurs than females. Riders within competitive, non-FEI disciplines were 1.53 times more likely to use spurs than recreational riders, and 1.48 times more likely to use spurs than those competing in FEI disciplines. This means that more novice people are using spurs who probably should not be using spurs than actual professionals who are most likely trained on how to use them properly, which is a really scary thought that more people who are probably unknowledgeable are using them than people who are knowledgeable and know how to use them. Longer spur shanks significantly increased the risk of skin abrasions or hair loss related to spur use. The shank is how far the spur is from the actual base. So the longer the shank is and the longer the actual spur is, the more damage it's causing to horses on average. Rotating spur designs were 1.5 times more likely to be associated with injury compared to fixed shank designs. Future research should consider motivational factors for equipment selection and how it affects the horse. This information may aid policymakers to formulate ethical guidelines for equestrian sports, but also extends to inform riders of all levels how their choice of day-to-day equipment can affect equine welfare. So I think this is a really important study because it highlights what spurs are inherently abusive to horses and what spurs aren't, and who should be using spurs and who shouldn't. I just wholeheartedly believe that no one should ever use rotating spurs or spurs that have sharp edges or multiple pressure points. This is because of the friction and the decreased surface area that's making contact with the horse. It's very similar to the Mezzarula, whatever the fuck it was that I did this review on, and everybody was trying to say that they weren't abuse because all of it made contact with the horse, which is not true. I even tested it out on my own skin, which, as we've talked about, humans actually have thicker skin and fewer nerve endings than horses do, meaning that horses feel more pain than people. But nevertheless, it fucking hurt. We're gonna place it on my knee because it's basically like, it has the least amount of skin covering the bone, which is similar to the horse's nasal bone, which is where this is applying pressure. So it's gonna be sitting right there.
Well, 5 pounds.
Okay, try to do like 1 pound of pressure.
It's probably like a pound.
Okay, it's uncomfortable. Try to do like, if you were riding a horse and you really wanted, ooh, that's uncomfortable shit.
Whoa!
Ow.
Oh shit, yeah?
Ow.
I wanna try it.
Oh my god, look at my skin. You can get a close-up of that. That actually fucking hurts.
Damn, I wanna try this.
Dude, that... Okay.
Alright, so now I feel like you're gonna stop me. Ooh, yeah. Do it again.
Okay.
Ow, fuck.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I don't think, oh, you can see
You can see it.
notches in that too.
I was barely
Damn.
pulling.
No, don't feel bad. I'm sorry. I pull on you that hard too. I can't believe how much that hurt.
Doesn't that hurt?
Yeah, that's really fucked up that people would design this thing.
And it doesn't matter that there were multiple pressure points supposedly distributing the pressure. What mattered was the fact that they were all separate and they were all poking me in different areas. It wasn't just one solid piece applying pressure to the full area. So all those little pressure points were digging into my skin and actually hurting. But the reason why rotating spurs hurt horses more and cause what we see all the time as spur marks, which look like this, is because rotating spurs cause added friction to the side of the horse. And not only that, but the surface area of the rotating spur is only the thickness of how big or wide the actual spur is. So going back to this TikTok that this girl made, yes, I would be willing to put money on the fact that more Western horses are abused than English horses by spurs on average, just because more Western riders use rotating spurs that have a much longer shank than English riders. Oftentimes, English riders, you really only see them riding in spurs that look like this, and all of these spurs are appropriate to use. I don't think these spurs are abusive. However, nobody should be riding spurs that they're not actually trained to be riding in, because spurs of any kind will bruise a horse and will cause pain or injury if used incorrectly. Spurs should absolutely never be used for punishment. They should only be used for leg aids or helping your leg to extend a little bit more when doing a particular activity to help the horse better understand what you're asking. Now, when I was using spurs for leg yielding, I noticed that it was way easier to use them during that particular activity because I didn't have to bring my leg all the way up and pull myself off balance to get my horse to feel what I was asking.
Nice. Now get the contact. Really work on that contact. Get her looking to the inside more than the outside. Sometimes even vibrating the right rein with your fingers helps her look more to the inside. There. Right? So you feel those moments. And what we want to do is keep it going and go. There you go. There you go.
The appropriate way to use spurs is to use spurs when you know how to use them, when you have a purpose for using them, and when you are using a spur that is relatively safe to be used. People really need to stop blowing this off as just everyone is debating and we don't really know one way or another, because we do. And if you want to keep abusing your horse, then stop saying that, oh, everyone else is wrong and there's nothing to back that up because I roll my spurs on my arm for a few seconds, even though I literally have thicker skin and less nerve endings, and it's only a couple seconds, whereas my horse has to feel that repeatedly for days and weeks and years whenever I ride them. I just think it's sad that people don't care enough about their horse to stop using a particular piece of tack. Nobody's even saying that you have to stop using spurs altogether. Just start using more ethical spurs and use them correctly when you actually have a need to use them.